Hello, everybody. This is Waldorf.
And this is Stadler.
Anyway, we're going to continue with our...
Herr Stadler to you.
continue with our review of the 2.0 beta test rules.
Yes, this is on the Magic Phase, section 10 of our multi-part series.
And it is, like you said, the Magic Phase.
Yes.
Models that can cast non-bound spells are referred to as wizards. There are three types of wizards: apprentices, adepts, and masters.
There's also the Washington Wizards.
So there are four types of wizards.
Yeah.
Spells can be cast during the magic phase. Most spells belong to a specific path of magic. Each of your wizards has to choose an available path of magic to select spells from. This choice has to be written down on your army list.
There you go. So that's basically the same.
Yeah, that's the same. Probably just rewritten.
Except we have
rewritten
three types of wizards instead of
two
types that had up to 4 options of spells.
Correct. Yeah. So moving on, just want to point out one thing we've said before in the other videos. Just want to make sure we mention it. And this one is the fact that these were rules that are not complete. They're not finished when they were given to us.
Right.
To look at and to report on. So some of the things may change from what we're seeing.
There may be some
here.
tweaks or whatever. We suspect we've already come across some wording things that will happen to a certain degree, and maybe some of the terms that they use may change when they pick better words. Found a better word in the thesaurus. Okay, brings us to spells. Spells can be cast during the magic phase. Most spells belong to a specific path of magic. Each wizard has to. Did you already read that? I'm geezing on me.
I did.
I think I am. I shouldn't have eaten and taken a nap and with my shawl in my rocking chair before I sat here. All right, so one more time. Spell properties. Yes, exactly. All spells are defined by the following 6 properties.
Apparently that used to be 5, I guess.
Maybe. Yeah, I think so. I don't recall. Spell classification, a single letter or number tells you if the spell is an attribute spell or a learned spell or any subcategory thereof. All right.
Okay.
Spell name, casting value, which is the same as before. The type, which is direct text, things of that nature. Duration, how long. And the effects. Okay, so got some stuff here. The effect of the spell defines what happens to the target of the spell when the spell is successfully cast. Spell effects are never affected by artifacts, model rules, or other spell effects or similar abilities affecting the caster unless noted otherwise. What are they trying to say here?
Spell effects are never affected by artifacts. Model rules. Okay, model rules. So they don't get lethal strike if your model has lethal strike.
Or frenzy or whatever. Okay.
They don't get lethal strike if your artifact gives a lethal. That type of thing.
Okay. All right. That's what it sounds like. Yes.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
All right, we'll go with that then. Spell classifications. They're divided into all these groups.
Learn spells, hereditary spells, replicable spells, and attribute
What was that
spells. Replicable?
What? One more time?
Exactly. Replicable.
Replicable.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the choice of
I don't like that
there.
word.
Yes.
The word is hard for me to say.
There you go. So we have learn spells.
dumb.
Yes, I are dumb.
This word makes me feel dumb because I can't say it.
So we have learn spells. All paths contain a number of learn spells, which is normally equal to 6. So basically, learn spells are labeled by number, rating from 1 to 6, which is relevant during the spell selection. A little redundant. Each individual learn spell may only be attempted to be cast once per magic phase unless it is replicable, even if it is known by different wizards.
Right.
So this is basically the same as before. Is you have 6 spells within each path, and you can only cast spells if you have on your side one time, unless you're allowed to specifically on the spell itself, where it says you can cast it again. And I think there's, from what I can tell, looking at there may be actually some additional aspects of this that we didn't see in the past, as far as more than just the undead stuff.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Then we have the hereditary spell. Most army books contain a hereditary spell. Most. I guess the dwarven holds don't. Aside from who knows a spell, hereditary spells follow the rules for learned spells. So basically, almost every army book has a unique hereditary spell for that army. Conceptually, I like that. It gives a little bit of variation,
flavor or whatever.
for flavor for each army. The level of the different spells they're still working on. It looks like as far
To
as
fluctuate a bit.
as far as the comparison between one army book to the other. But
Okay.
we'll see. Then we have replicable spells. Some learned spells can also be replicable. Now I can't say it. Replicable spells. These are
Notice I'm
labeled.
sitting here quietly.
These are labeled rep. Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
We'll go with rep.
Take a shortcut.
We're going to go with rep spells from now on.
Replicable spells may be tempted to be cast multiple times in the same magic phase, but still only once by the same wizard.
Okay.
So if you have one of these, well, that's an interesting. I didn't realize that was a limitation.
That's good. That's what it is currently.
Yeah.
For like the raised dead spell,
Yeah. I just didn't-
evocation.
Yeah, sure, and that's fine. It's just interesting on some of the things I've seen. So okay, so if you have multiple wizards that have the same spell, they can cast it, but one guy can't keep casting the same spell, which is fine. And attribute spells, which are the same pretty much as they was before. I'll just go down the blue parts.
And they do say
Path
it's
attribute. If there's any all-bound spells that contain a spell from a path with an attribute, automatically also contain the path attribute spell, which
Correct.
is very interesting.
the way it was,
Yes.
but spelled out.
Yes.
Augment spells
and
can
not all attribute spells by assumption don't. And not all hereditary spells have an attribute by
correct.
the way it's written. I haven't read them all, so I don't know.
The augment type spells may only target friendly units or friendly models inside of units if focused.
focused,
Okay,
yeah.
that makes sense.
Focus is the same as before. You just cast on a single model.
Or effects are
This
applied to all
is an
possible
area effects.
targets.
It affects all, apply to all possible targets.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Everything else looks like it's kind of
Then we have a hex. It's just a
the same
clarification.
thing. Enemy models
Yeah.
inside focused. If focused.
So the categories are there.
Yep. Everything. All this is kind of the same.
And from the little bit that I've looked at that we've been able to see, which isn't the whole thing or anything, but it looks like that most of the path spells are about the same as they were before.
From what I've seen.
And when they were asking for ideas, they said that was going to be the case. So maybe that's what I'm expecting.
Right.
So yeah. So we'll see. You'll see that remains in play has been removed. There are no longer any remains in play spells. However,
There are spells that remain in play.
we noticed that it's now been basically combined with permanent. So permanent kind of means it's permanent until a condition.
You mean like it remains in play?
Yes, exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
So permanent isn't really permanent. I mean, they probably shouldn't rename it to ongoing or
Yes.
or something else because it's not permanent
Correct.
in
Yeah.
a number of cases. So that one could probably use a name change, but that's just streamlining. It's
All right, we have the magic phase sequence next. So we start with the start of the magic phase. Then we move on to drawing a flux card.
yes, the flux capacitor.
Then we siphon the veil. Then we start casting. Casting attempt, if failed, skip to steps B through E.
Okay.
Oh, skip steps B through E and go directly to step
Yes.
5. Then you dispel. If successful, skip C through E and go directly to 5. If applicable, apply the miscast effect. Resolve the spell effect. If applicable, choose the targets for the attribute spell and resolve its effect. So there's a minor change here is where the attribute spell
The order.
is not declared when the spell is. Right?
Right, it's after you've
Because
resolved.
you resolve the spell effect, then after the next
Right.
step is you choose the target and
So if you
use
got
the attribute. So if you-
pyromancy, you can see if you wiped out the unit before you have
hit
to.
them with the extra.
Before you hit them
couple.
again, yes.
Yep.
It's kind of. I'm not sure I like that, but it's fine.
Repeats that. Then you go back and repeat this until the
Yes.
other player has performed an action.
Yes.
Then the end of the magic phase, resolve end of phase triggered abilities. So, starting with flux
With
cards.
the flux capacitor.
You like those, don't you?
The flux capacitor, yeah.
So the way you're no longer rolling 2 dice for magic, your standard way we do magic now, you roll 2 dice. The active player gets both dice. The reactive player gets the
high
highest.
die. Mm-hmm.
Okay, just like now we're no longer rolling dice
To obtain magic.
To obtain, correct. Now we have a deck of 8 cards.
Yes.
That we shuffle up and draw one of these cards. Correct. And it tells how many dice each player gets.
Yes.
You see card 1, both player gets 4 magic dice. The active player gets 3 veil tokens. But it's got a special note that all miscast this phase have a +1 miscast modifier. You can see down here there's another corresponding one with a -1 with 7 dice to both players and 7
and which will make more sense when we see the miscast table.
Correct. So these are the cards. They can only be used once. Once they're used, you discard one. You discard it, and for the next phase, and as you can tell, there's 8 of these cards. So every game there's going to be 2 random ones that are not used.
And you see that there is no 2 or 3 die magic phases any longer.
The lowest one is 4. And this really is a 5.
Technically, it's a 5.
Because 3 veil tokens trade in for, which we'll get to when we get to the siphoning.
Exactly.
3 veil tokens trade in for a magic die.
So unless you use them for other purposes, which we'll talk about also.
Right.
But and then on the flip side, you don't have any more 12s.
Correct. There are no really big ones.
Or an 11. So,
the 7 plus, I guess, 2 from this. 9 is the best standard card as far as the number of dice.
So they basically push it towards the middle. They've gotten rid of the 2 extreme magic phases.
Right. 2, 3, 12, 11 are all gone.
And they've balanced out the caster versus the
defender.
The non-active player. The reactive player. Because basically the Flux 5, I guess there's a lot of veil tokens there.
There's a 3-card difference, and this one will probably end up being a 3-card difference. 3 dice.
Depends on what else you got going in your arm. Maybe 2 or 3.
Yes.
But generally speaking, it looks like the caster's going to have like 2 more dice in many cases.
2 to 3
one to 2 dice with one exception, maybe 3. But they're not going to have any of these, 6 to 12 things that isn't going to happen anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that's going to be a possibility. Right. So we'll see. Maybe there's some magic items that flip stuff a little bit.
Correct, and they may adjust these cards again. We don't know.
Correct. So anyway, that's how the dice are going to be generated.
So that's how the magic is. Now there's an option here, which is this next part. Instead of using flux cards, you may use dice to randomize which flux cards to use. Mark which cards have already been used and re-roll whenever you get to the card. Here is an example of a randomize using 2D. I'll skip that randomization. It's easier just to use a D8.
Yeah.
But, actually, I think we both saw Once Bitten had made a comment about not being a fan of the cards because you do have the occasional person that's going to mark cards and do dastardly things. The workaround is to roll the die so they can't see what cards, what's going on.
Correct.
The other thing is, and we were chatting about this earlier, if you're running like tournaments, you can actually generate these cards yourself as a tournament,
as a
giveaway, and then that way everyone's got the same kind of same cards, and there's no funky business.
Right.
If you're worried about such things.
Correct. So once you've done this, now you have the number of dice you have.
Right.
And you have the number of magic dice for both players. And you have your veil tokens.
Right.
So now you do the siphoning. You siphon the veil.
Yes.
This time the active player creates a new pool of veil tokens.
I had a friend that paid a girl in the Philippines to do that once.
Siphon the veil?
Yeah.
Okay. How's he doing now? Is he still okay?
He's still alive.
Okay.
I think I had to get a shot of something.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. I'm sure he did. I thought you were doing the PG channel here. Anyway, the models with channel and veil tokens saved from the previous active player's previous magic phase. Okay, so you get your veil tokens from the flux cards, models with channel, and ones that you've saved from the previous turns.
Right, and there may actually be some other abilities
I've definitely seen magic items that can generate
magic items that also do that.
Generate
yes.
veil tokens.
Yes, as have I.
These Veil tokens can now be turned into magic dice at a 3-for-1 ratio.
3-to-1.
Yep. To do this, the active player removes any number of Veil tokens from their pool. For each 3 that were removed, the active player adds a magic dice. Up to 4 magic dice may be added to the active player's pool this way.
Okay.
So you can still not go to a
So in theory,
12 dice magic.
You can go to 11 theoretically.
Because that one had 7, right?
Right.
Okay. Afterwards, remove Veil tokens in the pool until it contains no more than 3 tokens. So you can never save more than 3.
Right.
The remaining Veil tokens are saved to be added to the Veil token pool of the active player's next
Right.
phase.
So you cannot use them in your dispel phase during your opponent's turn. You have to mark. This is going to take some getting used to because people get confused how many magic dice they've used. You're going to have to hold these things for a couple of, for a full turn. So you may want to think about having some markers or different colored dice or whatever.
Poker chips or something to track your Veil tokens.
Yeah. Now,
it's just something more to keep track of.
It's something more to keep track of. So be prepared, have something, or you don't want to get into arguments. Oh, I thought I had this. What's going on? Oh, I rolled that by accident. So
I was using dice and I accidentally picked them up.
Exactly.
I'm sure there was 3 there. It's okay.
Exactly, and you didn't remember what's going on. The other thing is we've noticed sometimes Veil tokens can be used for other abilities in the different armies.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a straight. You always have to turn them into 3. You may be able to turn 1 in to get like some other
to do something else.
So managing your Veil tokens is going to be a whole new aspect to the game.
Yeah, it's a pool you got to keep track of.
Yeah, you got to keep track. So if you're into having a real active, magic phase, and you like doing that kind of stuff and building up your Veil and figure out how you're managing your Veil, this is going to be really interesting to you. If you're a player that's not big on magic, or when you're first getting started, you may want to keep it simple.
Right.
But definitely use some markers so you don't get confused.
Okay. Spell casting sequence. Models with 1 or more spells may attempt to cast each of its spells up to 1 time per magic phase.
Yes.
This model is referred to as the caster.
Yes.
In the same magic phase, the same spell may only be attempted once.
Right.
Even if it's known by different wizards.
What's it?
What's that?
Same spell may only be attempted to be cast once.
Even if it's known by different wizards. Remember, bound spells, attribute spells, and replicable spells.
Okay, there you go.
Ignore this restriction.
Hold on, something's not
you
right
missed
there.
that, didn't you?
I did.
Okay.
Because you didn't read it.
I didn't read it. I skipped it.
Yeah.
I don't get. It's there. People read it.
Yes.
Casting attempt. The only thing different here, of course, you notice they did take out the bit about the attributes targets is not defined there.
Right.
The casting attempt is passed if the total casting roll is equal to or higher than the spell's casting value. Otherwise, the casting attempt has failed.
Now, this is basically the same as it is in 1.3. So
it is.
Once you figure out how many dice you want to throw at a spell, you roll them, and you're trying to equal or exceed the casting value of the spell to get it off.
Yep.
No difference. It's really just how you generate the dice. Which brings us to dispelling.
Well, the resolve, of course.
Okay.
You want to talk about dispelling, which is kind of the same as well.
Yeah. Whenever the active player rolls a successful casting attempt, the active player may attempt to dispel the casting attempt. The active player declares how many magic dice will be used, a minimum of 1 dice, and up to all dice remaining of reactive magic dice pool can be used. The reactive.
Hold on, scroll. Good look real quick. Okay, it is still a maximum.
Still a maximum of
5
5.
I was just curious.
That's correct. Hasn't changed. The reactive player basically rolls a dice, and if they, equal or exceed, they dispel the dice. Which is exactly. This is just clarification of language. Yep. Works exactly the same as it did before.
Okay. Moving on, you resolve the spell. After it's resolved, then you choose the path attribute spell and immediately apply its effect. The target for the path attribute
right.
applies its effect.
Which is the same as it was before. The next one's something you have to keep an eye on also. Fizzle. This is new. When a casting attempt or a dispel attempt is failed, any magic dice that rolled a natural 1 are put back into the magic dice pool from which they came. This does not apply to
from
casting.
Whence they came.
Yes, they came. Creature of Black Lagoon. This does not apply to casting or dispel attempts that fail due to not enough power.
Right.
Note that this does not apply to past casting attempts that are then dispelled. So, if you cast a spell and it's failed, or you tried to spell and it's failed, and you any ones you put back into your dice pool. This is something you're going to pay attention to, because I can see people. Sometimes people pick up their dice fast and everything else.
Right.
You know, and you're going to forget it, you're going to miss it, or whatever. So.
Oh crap! Did I roll any ones there?
Exactly.
Right.
Oh, I think I rolled a 1. Oh no! Oh, I didn't see that. You know, so
You already picked them up. Buddy.
you've already picked them up. So you don't want to get in that kind of conversation. So be a little, especially when you're first playing, be a little careful. The interesting thing is if you get the not enough power, or if it's dispelled. That in the case of it's not that it's dispelled, it went off anyway, so it doesn't matter. So
Yeah, your spell successfully cast, but then
Right.
was dispelled.
right,
Casting and boosted spells, there you go. There's nothing really
Nothing changed.
new. And then casting and dispelling modifiers are the most common is +1 for being a master,
right,
and add these modifiers can never exceed +2 and -2.
right. And we've seen an
Which
item
used
that
to
gives
be
a +1.
3 basically.
Yes, so they don't have they simplified that. So basically, the big wizard gets a plus, and the other ones don't. There's no more 3 different levels like with what do you call them, bound items. And
So
all
there
that.
is no more lost focus, and
Correct.
there is no more overwhelming power.
Correct.
With the double 6s.
Correct. You either get the spell off or you don't get the spell off. The only difference is if you get some fizzle, you might get some dice back.
Right. Not enough power, mentioned before, same as it is right
Right.
now, is if you roll a natural roll of 1 or 2 on the total of the dice, counts as not enough power. When this happens, no dice are recovered due to fizzle.
Well, actually,
What?
when rolling casting, I just noticed this. When rolling casting dispel rolls with a single magic dice,
It has changed.
a natural roll of 1 or 2 on the magic dice is always a fail casting in test regardless of any modifiers.
Did that change, or have I just played it wrong?
So it's only with a single magic die.
That's what I'm seeing
Yeah,
right
not with, if you roll snake eyes and you can get enough boost, it'll go off.
there. Yeah, I'm thinking... Oops, what am I doing?
You're looking at a picture of Maine for some reason.
Stop
I
it.
don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if... Because that's not... The single's not in blue. Have I been playing this wrong?
It's possible, or
Okay.
it's also they changed
Okay.
a few things that aren't in blue,
All right.
The-
Anyway. So now we have the new miscast chart.
which is very different.
Which, as you can see, is way different. When making a casting roll of 3 or more magic dice, roll the same... When making a casting roll and 3 or more magic dice roll the same value, the casting attempt is a miscast. If the casting attempt is successful and not dispelled, apply the effects of the miscast, which are determined by the value on the magic dice that was rolled 3 times. If 3 magic dice were used for the casting roll, the miscast counts as the value of the dice rolled 3 of a kind as 1 lower. So if I roll only 3 dice, I roll 3 threes, they count as 2s. If I use 5 dice, they count as 1 higher. So now my 3 threes count as 4s. A plus X or minus X miscast modifier, that means that X is added or deducted from the value of the dice, yielding the miscast. For example, a +1 miscast modifier makes a 2-2-2 count as a 3-3-3. So basically there's 2 chances to add pluses or subtract from the dice you rolled.
Right.
So basically, if you end up with 3 zeros or lower, there's no additional effects.
Right.
Except for the fact, anyway, the spell probably didn't cast.
Yeah.
If you roll 3 1s, the casting attempt is considered to be failed, and apply fizzle is ready. So even if you needed a 9 to cast the spell, and you rolled 3 1s and a 6, which would be a 9, it still fizzles. From what I'm reading.
Correct. Like if you roll 5 dice, you had 3 1s and 2 6s.
Then that would be a problem, because that would go up to 2s because of the 5 dice thing. But otherwise,
Oh yes, you're right. Yeah.
But you're on the right 5.
Yeah.
I know what you're thinking.
Yes.
Triple 2s is Witchfire, which the casting unit suffers 1d6 hits with AP2, magic attacks and a strength equal to the number of magic dice that were actually used for the casting roll.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Witchfire. Next one is Magic Inferno. After resolving the spell's effect, the caster's unit suffers 2d6 hits with AP2, magical attacks, and a strength equal to the number of magic dice that were used.
This is the one that Equitane does not want to roll.
They don't want to see this anywhere near
Yes.
them. They don't even want the 2s.
2's is rough, but yeah, that 3-3-3 was oof.
3-3-3 looks really bad.
Yeah. For them at least.
The next one is Amnesia. I mean, anybody with high armor and low toughness, it's going to be the issue.
And low wound count.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Amnesia, if you roll 3 4s, there's no roll. The caster just cannot cast the miscast spell anymore this game.
So basically, he's forgotten it. So
yes. I mean, the Amnesia in the current, as you know, the Amnesia in the current rolls, 50-50 chance of affecting it.
Right.
That's gone. It just happens. Backlash on a triple 5s. After resolving the spell's effect, the caster suffers 2 hits that wound on a 4-up with AP10 and magic.
Yes.
So that's pretty ugly.
Unless you're a goblin, though, you prefer that than some of the things before it.
Correct. Well, depending on what the unit is you're in, yes.
Yes.
And triple 6 Implosion. After resolving the spell's effect, including the attribute, the caster suffers 4 hits that wound on a 4-up with AP10 and magic.
Which, in theory, has a decent probability of just killing your mage.
I mean, it should put 2 wounds on you, on average.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what in theory. It depends how you roll.
Right.
Unless you're an ogre, then you can handle it pretty well. But
yeah, anything
because you have the extra wounds. But yeah, it's average 2 and deviation 1 on each side.
Correct.
So yeah.
So there's a decent chance it does kill
you.
Yeah. Breach in the Veil on triple 7s or higher. After resolving the spell's effect, the caster's model dies.
Yeah, no rolling.
Remove it from the game as a casualty. No saves of any kind. Now, I got to tell you, I kind of like the fact that it's a straight. Doesn't matter how many wounds the model has. It's just gone.
I do too. Well, because the only way you can get this is if you have the flux card that has the plus, and you happen to miscast, or you put a whole bunch of dice into it. So.
Or you put a whole bunch of dice into it, unless there's something else in the game that gives you a plus or minus.
Right. And I'm sure somebody's got some kind of item that probably does that, but still.
Okay. So there's the miscast chart. Way different than what it used to be.
Way different.
Basically, the
to
plus,
me it's easier.
It's easier, and another thing is it's got the plus of if I play safe magic and roll 2 dice a turn, I'm not miscasting ever. It's not possible.
Correct. And frankly, your probability of miscasting on 3 dice is pretty darn low.
Yes. Correct.
And even 4, it's not terrible, but it's risky. But 5, it starts improving. But yeah, you're pretty safe up to 3 dice, I think.
All right. Next section. Bound spells. This description of bound spells doesn't change.
Correct, which brings us to power level. Okay, so we've talked about how regular magic works for spells and from the past. Bound spells use a different mechanic for casting, at least. Power level. All bound spells have 2 power levels, giving us values in brackets. Power level, for example, power level 5/9. The first value is the bound spell's primary power level. This is used when the bound spell is cast with 2 magic dice. The second value is the bound spell's secondary power level and is used when the bound spell is cast with 3 magic dice. Just on a sidebar, things that I've seen, it looks like a lot of items are actually 4/8. Casting a bound spell. Casting a bound spell ignores the normal casting attempt rules and instead follows its own. Okay. Each of the active player's non-fleeing models with bound spells may attempt to cast each of these bound spells up to 1 time per magic phase. This model is referred to as a caster. Bound spells can be cast even if the same spell has already been cast earlier with the same magic phase through a path, not to that item, of course. Casting a bound spell does not prevent the casting of the same spell later in the magic phase, even as a non-bound spell.
Okay.
So kind of flip things. Bound spell casting attempt. The active player declares which model is casting the bound spell, and if it is cast with 2 or 3 magic dice, provided there are enough dice available. If I got one, I'm going to use 3. If applicable, they also declare what its targets are. The spell is always cast with the basic version and cannot be boosted.
Okay.
The active player removes the chosen number of magic dice, 2 or 3, from the magic dice pool, and you do not roll them. The casting spell is always successful. Important. If 2 magic dice were removed from the casting spell, it is equal to the bound spell's primary power level. If 3 dice were removed, it is equal to the bound spell's secondary power level.
Okay.
Note that bound spells trigger the path attribute spell, and that unless noted otherwise, casting modifiers are not applied to casting roll of bound spells. Now, so the big thing here is it's fixed. You decide what level you're going to cast it at, and you have a choice for the base level or the boosted level,
right.
and you just put down the dice.
Yeah. In the example, they say just discard 2 dice and it casts it a 5.
Exactly, and it basically counts
or
as
3 dice and it casts it a 9.
and a 9 based on the numbers here.
Correct.
And
on the example they give.
right.
Yes.
Now, dispelling works exactly the same as normal match. So you still have to roll and beat the casting value. It's just the bound spells casting value. So the dice are just there to suck dice out of your pool to generate the item, but you can't like uber power a bound item like you can in 1-3. It just to make it so it's so hard to dispel. Correct. So
and you don't have those weird, the annoying situations when you're playing some guy with a warrior priest or whatever. What are they called now? Anyway,
yes.
And he rolls 2 dice on his bound spell and rolls a 12.
Yes.
Now you're like looking at this like, oh crap, I've got to use 4 dice to dispel a bound spell.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's taking away the highs and the lows, and it's also a bound spell. If you have the dice, you're not rolling; it casts.
Exactly. So there's no chance that it won't go off.
Correct.
Now, the interesting thing about it is, as I said, I've seen a number of them, and it looks like they're actually mostly 4s and 8s, but that's probably all going to change. 2 magic dice, you can often take the chance to dispel it with just 1 if you have like a wizard master.
Considering 1/3 of the time it's going to go through.
It's you're going to fail.
Because you're going to roll a 1 or 2 1/3 of the time.
Right. You may take that chance if it's not a particularly powerful spell. But when you get 3 dice and it's casting at an 8 or a 9, if you don't want that spell to go off, you really have to think about putting 3 or 4 dice against it.
Because if you're using 2 dice, you're only getting +2.
Exactly.
If you're a wizard,
+1.
+1.
Yes.
+1. You're right.
Yeah.
Why was I thinking 2? Because the max is +2.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a plus dispelling device. Okay. Wow. Okay.
So
So that's going to change the way dispelling. Bound spells.
So you're not going to see these like single dicing, these bound items any longer when people have a whole bunch of them.
Right.
I think you're going to see more people putting 3 because they want to really draw out their opponent's dispel dice.
Yep, I agree. Wow. Yeah, that's going to change things.
Yes.
All right.
Magical effects.
Magical effects, they just changed some wording because we're in the moving units subphase.
Yes.
Just going with the new name of the subphase.
Right.
Actions that a unit can normally do in the moving unit subphase, wheeling, reforming, leaving units, and so on, are what they're allowed to do with their magical move, including march. Except the unit cannot march. Now it can march as well.
You can't march.
I guess
it's just how they're...
You're limited to the distance.
Yes. They have a weird way of saying that target's rate and march rate are always equal to this value.
Right. Correct. So it doesn't. You're not...
Yeah.
Anyway, you're not marching. You're just moving faster or whatever.
It'd be better if they just had a 12-inch magical
move,
advanced move or whatever, if they're trying to differentiate. So.
But anyway, so just clarification difference.
Yeah, they're just rewording it to fit the new nomenclature.
And the recover raise feature, of course, is extensively rewritten to use health points instead of wounds.
Yes, that's basically it.
And
talks about the order, which is the same. Although I think they've reworded the rank when you have multiple ranks, how that works, didn't they?
Models without front ranks must be placed in the back rank if incomplete, or in a new back rank if the current back rank is complete. Okay. Used with 1 rank In units with one rank, including single model units, a raised unit can either be placed in the front rank, or you can declare the front rank complete and create a new rank. So basically, if you've only got a single rank, you don't have anybody in a second rank, you can go wide with your raised guys.
Because before you had to go wide, didn't you? If you were single line, you had to keep extending to the side, I think.
I don't recall. I don't think you did.
It was only if you already had ranks that you could add ranks. So it was, but I think they cleaned it. They fixed it.
Okay.
As far as the language.
All right. And any models that cannot be placed in a legal formation are lost.
It cannot be placed, yes.
And the raised models are subject to the same ongoing effects as the unit they got raised into. Right.
And I think that brings us to the end of the magic phase. So
see the shooting phase.
Yeah, so this is one of the big changes to version 1.9. This is the new magic phase. That, and the casting is about the same, as I said before. It's really just how dice are generated and managing your flux pool, your veil pool, tokens. And what's going on is going to be a new thing in the game that people have to get used to. And as I said, really recommend that people use something different for their veil tokens. So
rather than dice, yes.
Rather than dice, just because I can just see the.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see how the bound spell part of this works. I'm not sure right off the top without thinking about it for a while whether this is a big plus, an equal, or a minus.
I think that overall, with the 3 dice option, bound spells are really nice to have. You're guaranteed you're getting them off with 3 dice. Say it's a 9. I mean, if you had 3 dice trying to roll a 9, that's an average roll, slightly below average.
True.
You know, this is 100% versus a 48%, a 52%. I mean, so that part, you're getting a spell off. Now your opponent has to make a decision. Hey, I got a 52% chance, or maybe a 60% chance of stopping it if I have a good wizard.
Right.
I need to stop this. I need to put I may have to put 5 freaking dice into this thing.
Yeah, and there are no more +1 to dispel bound spells.
Right. So if you have a 1 bound spell, yeah, it's no big deal. But if you're an army that has a lot of bound spells, I think this becomes very powerful because you know what you're getting. So beast herds, dwarven holds, and Empire of Sonsal, those are the ones that have all the bound items. So I think this can be very, very powerful. You can be very effective with bound items in your army. Assuming that the bound items have a good ability, that is.
Correct.
If they're cop,
there is that.
then it doesn't really matter. Yeah, it's a cop. This one gives me +1 weapon skill. It's not such a big thing, but
nice.
This one gives me +1 toughness. That's something completely different.
Yes.
So yeah.
All right. Well, that's the magic portion.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
Until our next video.